Hi, and welcome to Step Into the Story. This is our book chat for July. And I'm Donna Jones-Allward, and this is Barbara Tanner Wallace.
What's up, Barb? How you doing?
What's up? What's new?
Not a lot. I'm back from vacation. I am healthy. Yay. And psyched to get to my beach reading. I got a pile.
Right? Same.
We'll talk about this one. But hey, okay, so before we start, you have news.
I have a teensy bit of news.
And we should share it.
Okay. Okay. So it looks like I have probably a title for the historical fiction that's going to come out like mid-year of 2024. And the title is When the World Fell Silent.
I like that a lot.
I know and everyone I've said it to has been like, oh my God, I love that title. And it was my editor that came up with it, apparently from a line in the book, which I don't remember where I put that line. So I'm doing copy edits right now. So I'm actually keeping my eyes open for when I see it so I can realize where it is in context.
I like that title a lot. It's hopefully going to be out for beach reads, right?
Yeah, it should be. Everything's just sort of being finalized. And I know like the art department is like doing preliminary stuff now. And we were just saying probably mid 2024. And then it'll release like hopefully in the main markets all at the same time.
So we should give a little shout out that people were, say, on your mailing list, if they signed up at DonnaAllward.com or DonnaJonesAllward.com and signed up for your mailing list, they would get to see the cover probably first.
Probably.
So they should sign up for your mailing list to get all the details.
They should. And that is on my website at DonnaAllward.com or DonnaJonesAllward.com. Both go to the same URL.
There you go. It'll be in the show notes anyways. It always is.
Yeah.
If you want all the details, sign up for the mailing list.
That's it.
Yeah.
But this show is not about me. This show is about Beatrice Williams' latest, The Beach at Summerlee.
I know. So excited. I have my book right here.
I know. It's such a cool cover.
It is, isn't it? She gets pretty covers. I take it back. I did not like the cover for Our Woman in Moscow. It fit the book.
It did fit the book, but it felt very not on brand necessarily.
Right. And it was very dark and kind of, I got it right here. So it was, in comparison, it was hard this didn't entice you to pick it up unless you were a Beatrice Williams fan. This one really,
it doesn't feel like Beatrice Williams, but I love that book.
I do too. And if this is on a shelf and you're looking for a beach read, doesn't this say, read me?
Yes, it's turquoise and bright yellow.
And so I confess, she has been, I'm going to hold it up for a while here. She's been an auto buy for me since 2018 when I worked at Barnes & Noble and I picked up the read for Summer Wives. So I love her. I think her books are intricately plotted. And the part that kills me, she's the most rich characters. Even the minor characters, like there's a character in here, there's a librarian that has like maybe 6 lines. And she's 3-dimensional and well drawn.
Yep. It's
just, this was a fantastic read. And I'll read the summary just because I don't think it really gives it the proper, it doesn't capture how good the book is. May 1946, as the residents of Winthrop Island open their doors for summer season, a glamorous new figure moves into the guest cottage at Summerlee, the idyllic seaside estate of the wealthy Peabody family. To Emilia Winthrop, daughter of Summerlee's year-round caretaker, Olive Rainsford opens a window into a world of daring possibility. While Emilia spent the war years caring for her incapacitated mother, Olive traveled the world and fought for political causes. She's also the beloved aunt of the 2 surviving Peabody sons, Amory and Shep, with whom Emilia has a tangled romantic history. As the weather heats up, Olive draws Emilia into a deep rapport while romance simmers with war hero Shep. But the heady promise of Peabody patronage is blown apart by the arrival of Sumner Fox, an FBI agent who demands Emilia's help in capturing a Soviet agent who's transmitting vital intelligence on the West's atomic weapons program from somewhere inside the Summerlee estate. And I won't keep going, but it jumps also, there's a storyline that's 8 years in the future with Emilia being called back to deal with the things that happened in 1946.
Right. So Okay, so if I were picking that up and I hadn't read any of Beatrice's books before, I'd be like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. And like, so I think if you stand back that way, I mean, it's a really great blurb, but I think you and I both know that like her standout thing is like her voice.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to capture that in back cover copy. And so like it draws you in, but it's like once you open the book, then you're in the world of it.
Exactly.
People. So I think it's great back cover copy, but what's inside is so much better.
I think, yeah, I guess it doesn't capture the richness. We talked about this the other day, that we were talking about how books have two levels. There's the external plot, and then there was what the book is really about.
Yeah.
And reading, the thing about Beatrice Williams books is you really, well, the plot is great. I was like, yeah, KGB agents, blah, blah, blah. That's exactly how I approached it. I read it because of this other stuff, the stuff that's below the surface. I mean, this book is about grief. It's about missed opportunities. Yeah. It's about family. It's about the need to escape.
Yeah.
There was just so much richness in the themes and things that she wove in that actually the stuff about the KGB agent stuff was the least interesting part to me. It was not the part that was hitting me in the gut the way some of the other stuff was.
No, it was sort of the vehicle that drove everything along, right? Yes. That kept things developing and complicating things. But it really was about the characters.
Yes. And then like the cover copy talks about the romance with her and Shep. And there's actually three relationships. There's the relationship with her father. There's the relationship with Shep. And then there's the relationship she has with Olive. Yeah. And if you ask me, the book is really about her relationship with Olive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the relationship with Olive is definitely the more complicated relationship. And I love Shep. And I also love that it's this fantastic friends to lovers story. And we get to see Emilia, and I mean, almost everyone calls her Cricket. Like that's her nickname. So we see her growing up and out of her fascination with Amory, and then realizing how much she cares for Shep. And it's a much more grown up relationship. And so that's fine. But with Olive, Olive represents so much that Emilia longs for. She's had adventures. She's independent. She's fun. She's joyous. And I mean, Cricket's house is not necessarily a joyous household. She loves her children. And I think part of that too is that we know that Olive is the antagonist in the story, yes. But we like Olive. She's very likable. And because Cricket likes Olive so darn much, it's really hard for her to believe the truth when she's presented with it. And then she feels the betrayal so deeply. And so I think that's a much more complicated relationship. And her relationship with her father is as well, because it's one of those things where, you think you know somebody and then you don't. You just really don't.
There's a lot of gray. Again, just when you think you dislike somebody, she gives you a moment where, like with the father, there's these moments where suddenly she reveals their true color motivation, and you're like, oh. Or Amory, he has a moment where you're suddenly he's redeemed.
Or her sister, even with Susanna, right?
And I think that the other part is with Olive, she is so likable, and I think that's part of the tension, is waiting to see if that's real or not. What's up with Olive? You spend the whole time thinking that, because she's a KGB agent, or it's hinted at, and you're like, what's up with that? What's up with that? And that's the tension that's in there, is you keep waiting for that other shoe, and it does a great job.
Yeah, and it's how much of this is cover and how much of this is who she really is, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think all of those things keep things interesting and a little off balance. Even the waitress from that Cricket works with at first, and then Susanna works with, she has a hidden layer that we don't expect, that we find out later. And then
everything does.
Yeah. And
everything has a hidden layer. People announce their engagements, and you can tell, even without her saying it, what the reason behind some of these things are. And
Tippy, right? Amory's fiance. She got, I mean, you were right. Every character is so whole,
yes,
even if they have small parts. And not only that, and I know like next week you're going to be talking with, not next week, 2 weeks from now, talking with Shirley Jump about setting for the writing room, because I'm going to be on vacay. And, you know, I think ever since you and I did the workshop with Susan Meixner on setting his character, like even the mansion at Summerley is a character.
yes.
And the island itself is a character. And the estate in Summerley sort of looms over the story. Like you made a point that it's like Manderley and Rebecca.
Right. Well, and it's funny because there's actually a moment where she makes a call out to Rebecca.
Yeah.
Where she talks about the book Rebecca, and you're like, yeah,
yeah. Last night I dreamt of Summerley again, right? Like, I mean, ostensibly that's a thing. So, you know, and Emilia belongs and yet doesn't belong through a good portion of the story. And I thought that she showed that really well in the beginning, because the Peabodys and Emilia's family, they're far more friendly than just that of regular employer-employee. They call her Cricket. She's always been really good friends with the boys. But when she shows up to Shep's party, his mother sends her to the kitchen to join the help. And I really thought that was, well, you know, like that's me in my place then kind of moment.
And yeah, you know, for that matter, I was going to say, and actually then I was mad at the mother, but then she rationalized it like, well, why wouldn't she think that? I am the daughter of the caretaker and I've never actually been a guest before. But I was going to say, for that matter, Winthrop Island itself is a character, because she gives this whole rich history for the island that she weaves in. And I think that one of the things that it lends to the emotional punch for this, again, using that word, but is because they're on the island and they're isolated. And Cricket has spent her whole life on that island, and all she wants to do is get off the island. But she's reconciled herself to the fact that she's not going to, because of certain life events that have happened. You know, she's got a sick mother. There's other things going on, and so she feels like. And throughout the book, there are several times where it looks like she's gonna get her wish to get off the island.
Yeah.
And then something happens to keep her there. And every time that happens, and it's like it emphasizes the fact that she's shut off from the freedom that she wants.
Yeah.
Because she's not just stuck at home. She's stuck on an island that only can go back and forth.
Right.
And those of you who live up in New England know the ferries shut down in the winter.
Yeah.
For a period because of the weather.
Yeah.
You know, they close down. You're not getting a lot of back and forth, and those islands become barren. So she, you know, she's just got this small local group that she doesn't hang out with, and the people that she is part of that world leave
and
her.
those people are not necessarily there all year round either, but the islanders are. And like I just felt like, again, going back to that Meissner workshop, because like she's so brilliant, but like every setting did really imbue everything with a mood. So whether it's the ocean and getting caught in currents when they're out in a boat, or like I felt like Cricket's house felt very claustrophobic and like dark, like not bright and airy. Summerley seems to have
describes it. There's weight to the description.
Yeah, and there's Summerley seems to have shadows around the edges.
Yeah.
And then
I was going to say, there's a scene where she talks about a quilt, and she talks about her grandmother used to make the quilt for when she got married, and then she talked about her grandmother died in childbirth, leaving her father and his brother and this quilt that she sleeps under every
right day. And by the way, the quilt is now like not red but faded
and like heavy and all these other things.
Right. And then like but the cottage where Olive is, and Olive's the villain, but the cottage where she is feels like it's, you know, messy with beach towels and cake crumbs, and it's light and it's easy, and so everything has this atmosphere to it. And for me, it felt almost cinematic.
Yeah.
You know, like, so I just thought that was, and I always say that, you know, voice is her big thing, but her setting in this was outstanding.
You made that setting work so well. Because I said, I go back to the island thing. I think that if it had been in downtown Boston or, you know, in New York, or even in a small town, it wouldn't have had the same effect as her being isolated in this place that has
Right.
her family has lived at for 200 years.
So even if we took this sort of class setting and put it in, say, the Hamptons or even on the Cape or something, it still wouldn't be the same as this little island. Like it, yeah.
Exactly.
And I think you and I were talking recently about like if you can take your story and transplant it into another setting, then your setting isn't working hard enough.
Good point.
So I think you can't take this out of this setting and just plunk it somewhere. Like the setting itself is a character. All right. So you said that you felt like the whole spy plot was like the least interesting for you.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was interesting, and I wanted to know what happened, and it drove the plot. But I was so more invested in the relationships going on and in Cricket getting off the island than I was the spy thing. You know, and they would go into detail about like the radio and the wiring, and I'm like, you know that.
Right. And you know the attic upstairs and everything. And
I skimmed a little about some of that stuff. Yeah.
But I think part of that might be because we don't get a whole lot of sense of the intricacies of that particular plot until like probably halfway through the book or more. We're so invested in everything else, and we know that it's there, but it's kind of in the background, and we know that there's something about Olive and there's suspicion, but it's not. And then all of a sudden things really start to ramp up. And like, I'm not sure how I would have changed it though, because if you have M or Cricket suspicious earlier, or if you bring in some of the other players earlier, it would have really changed the character arcs.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I would have changed that differently. And I don't even necessarily think it needed to be changed. I think that the intrigue, I don't think it's kind of the scaffold of the story, but like, I really feel like it's the characters that are like the whole
exactly. It's not, like I said, it drove the story. I certainly didn't dislike it. I mean,
and you can't take it out and have the same story. So it's still important, but it's not really what engages you, your feelings.
And I think it's brilliant how, she weaves in all these little details that you, at the beginning of the book, when they show up to matter at the end of the book. And you're like, I didn't know that. Look at that. Even like I was just flipping through looking for some quotes earlier, and there's a scene where, I'm not spoiling it too bad, but Shep mentions going away. Right. And she tells her mother that, and her mother starts crying. And she said, "Oh no, Amory, I'm not going with him." And then the mother starts crying harder. And you don't realize to the end of the book, it's not what you think it is. And it's just, it's just so much, there's so much richness.
Did you have a gasp moment at anywhere near the end of the book?
Towards the end of the book, did I have a gasp moment?
We didn't talk about this before. Yes. And I just thought about it.
There is a scene, and I don't want to spoil it, but it's a conversation between Cricket and her father.
That's not the one I'm talking about.
Oh, that one. That was the one that got me when he tells some stuff about the family history that I wasn't expecting.
Right. No, there's something that happens between Olive and Cricket toward the end.
Oh, yes. Now, again, I can't spoil it, but it was really like a...
Yeah, I was like, oh. And it made perfect sense, but it was like, oh, she went there. It was one of those she went there things. And it's one of those moments where, like, oh God, how do you say it without spoiling it? But it's one of those moments where you understand that, Olive really was capable of doing all those things. And
Olive loved Cricket.
She did.
She loved Cricket. And so that was what made it so fascinating. And, I'm going to interview Kelly Rimmer next week. And that's the thing about the Paris agent. There's a double agent in it. And when he was like, but the people in it are so likable that you're like, well, all these people are really nice people who could possibly be the double agent.
Right.
And she does a brilliant job of planting just enough clues that it could be like one of 5 people. And all of them are likable people. So you're like, huh, which one?
I don't have my copy yet, so I haven't read it yet.
And so I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's exactly the same thing. Like I liked Olive. Like she's someone you wanted to hang out with.
I know. And honestly, she made that summer so much better for Cricket.
And she opened doors for Cricket and made Cricket think of things that she never would have thought about. And
she took Cricket's mother down to the beach. Like she's just very likable. Like
she was a wonderful mother. She loved her kids. She baked. I mean,
there was always crumbs.
For her, her kids were very important. Yeah. And at the same time, she was doing this other stuff. So it was Now, can we take a minute to talk about because this is something I know I think I've said it, I called it voice, but having narrowed it down, it's Beatrice's use of dialogue.
Yes.
She's brilliant.
Okay. You do your thing first.
Okay, so I'm going to say she does a fantastic job of matching the speaking pattern to the mood and to what's going on in the book. And like even I think originally I started saying, like you look at this book and how the language is versus how the people talk in The Golden Hour, which has a reporter in 1941 and that person speaking very snappy and hey, it's kind of a rhythmic to it. And
you wait till you read Wicked City. That's completely different again.
And then Cricket has there's one way of speaking in part of the book. And then every time you flash forward and she's older, her speaking is different. Her tone of voice, her sentences, there's so much that is different. Her use of certain words, she's sharper, she's more cynical sounding. And I was like, she's brilliant at that. Absolutely brilliant because it's never the same. I've read, books by her and every single time the voice and dialogue have been different.
I know. And I think with Cricket, like when we fast forward to in the 50s, like 8 years later, she's grown up. She's had her heart broken. She's put her back together. Yep. She left the island and she left those days behind her. So she thinks. And I feel like the older M has very little time for BS. And I agree, this is something Beatrice excels at. Like every character has their own voice. And, you could pick out dialogue and not put any tags and you'd probably realize who was speaking. It really is. And I've said this before too, it's like a masterclass. The one thing, and I just thought of this when you started talking about dialogue, the one thing that I noticed in the book is that sometimes there would be dialogue where a character would speak to another one and there were no quotation marks. And then most of the time there were. And it was just kind of weird how that was chosen. And I wish
the pattern in books now when they do flashbacks and they're the person, or not flashback, but the person's thinking about what someone said. They take the quotation marks out. I think that's why it just seems to be a new style.
Yeah, and I'd have to pick a section like deliberately, but it struck me that it wasn't like that though. But it suited it. Like it was just weird. So anyway, I did notice that, and I was like, because I'm very I'm not experimental with my punctuation. So I would probably never do that because I would find
I make mine up as I go along, but
it would just be like I would always be like, that's not right. I have to fix it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
So all right. And then you wanted to make one other point before
I did because so Easter eggs. If you are into Easter eggs,
right.
He has packed some in here, which I was amused. I was like, oh, that goes back to Summer Wives. Oh, that goes back to Our Lady in Moscow. She did a great job of that. And if you're into those, it's a lot of fun. And there was another book they did a lot of Easter eggs. Which one was it that we were like, oh, there's Easter eggs, and we're getting so excited?
Was it one of Lauren Willig's? It might have been one of Lauren's.
It might have been Lauren's, or I think we were talking about it with Renee, so it might have been. We were talking with Renee Ryan about it.
Yeah. I know. I was trying to think of it earlier too, because there was one where I was like, "Ooh, Easter eggs." I do think that. Oh, there was some in Lauren's latest, because
she did do it, yes, because she was dropping stuff in about the other books.
Band of Sisters, right? Like there was some pickups there. So,
and interestingly, Lauren Willig and Beatrice Williams are both on the same Team W.
Right.
So I bet you if we read a lot of Karen White's, we'll find Easter eggs too.
Yeah. Well, and actually, when we read the last Team W book last year, all kinds of Easter eggs, like from Karen as well.
Yes.
To her like Charleston series and stuff. So I'm not necessarily good at picking up on Easter eggs because I read a lot and then I forget some of those details. Like, so there are a couple of, pretty big Easter eggs in this one from Our Woman in Moscow. But until you told me that, I hadn't clued in. And I know like people out there who have read both were like, Donna, how could you miss that? Because like they're big. They're not just like Easter eggs. It's like the whole Easter Sunday kind of thing. But
that one was a pretty big, yeah. But you know what?
Yeah.
I didn't pick up on either. And I was like,
yeah.
The book about this, and you're like, Barb, that was in our latest.
It's one of those things where I was like, okay, so I know I've heard that before and I'm trying to remember where. And then, we went and had a quick little look and it was like, oh yeah. So, but there are Easter eggs in there. And it is enough that, actually what we should say is like the whole story about Digby when you get to it and Sumner Fox.
There's a lot of links to.
Yeah, so it will make you want to go back and read Our Woman in Moscow if you haven't yet, because you're going to want to know what she's talking about. So,
and there's reference to something that it's reference to the plot of Summer Wives. And if you haven't read Summer Wives, which is out in paperback too, which is nice.
Yeah,
that one's the one I fell in love with her writing. It's a great story, and so that one also makes you want to, because it references a murder.
Yeah.
And you're like, what murder? And then it's not unusual. It's local gossip, but that story takes place in Winthrop Island as well.
Right. So, I mean, I don't even think I necessarily have to ask this, but final verdict?
5 stars. 10 stars.
I know.
Spoiler. Last week, I'm going to love it. Although that's not true, because I have disliked a couple of her books. I said that off the air, that there was a couple books that I was on, but she always drives me back in, and I'm like, oh yeah, no, you are great.
Well, because a lot of times it's probably just a taste thing, because she's a brilliant writer. So and not every book is going to hit every reader like 100%. There's always going to be favorites.
No, and I always maintain when you get to people like her or like a Lauren Willig, or a Kelly Rimmer, a so-so Beatrice Williams book is still going to be a cut above a lot of books.
Yeah, or a Kate Quinn, or
exactly.
Yeah.
So you not like go, they didn't love it, but it was still way better than a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah, she draws you in and just keeps you going along. Like I read it in 2 sittings. Basically, I read a third, maybe 40% on one day, and then I sat down and read the rest.
I did the same thing. It was
and I don't do that with a lot of books. So it really kept me going. All right, so this is probably a good point to wrap up.
Yes.
So for our viewers, we'd love to hear what you think of the book if you've read it. If not, go get it. You can leave a comment on our YouTube channel, which is at Step Into the Story Books, or on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/groups/Step Into the Story. And
we post other things too, so come chat up.
Oh yeah. We post lots of stuff, and like I said, your featured author next week is Kelly Rimmer. So
and I promise to behave myself. I will not be a little over the top much. Yes, she wrote The Paris Agent, which is out today.
Yeah, so today's release day.
Is getting great reviews. I will back that up. It's complex. It's interesting. Her characters are very sympathetic. I loved it. It's another one that I sat and whipped through in like 2 sittings. So
I keep having to check my mail. It was
fantastic. I got it off NetGalley, so thank you for the advanced read, and definitely go out and buy that one as well. And then at the end of the month, we are going to do setting, And since Donna's off, going to be on a beach with her husband, we are going to have our good friend, Shirley Jump, who is the author of Writing Compelling Fiction, which is one of the best-selling writing books out there. She's going to share her 5 tips on how to make setting work for you. She's a brilliant teacher. I talked her into doing it live so that she from the audience as well. But I think that that's the best way to do it with her, because she's a wealth of knowledge, and you can ask her anything and you'd be surprised how quickly and how deeply she'll answer your question.
I am expecting that one will probably go over 30 minutes, but it won't feel like 30 minutes.
No, and I think people will be glad for the information. So
yeah. Yep.
And then you're back in August.
I am.
And what's our next book chat?
Our book chat is, I don't have the date on me, but we got some time. But it's the first, I believe it's first Tuesday in August. And we're going to be discussing a new to us author, Kate Cavari, and her book, The Botanist's Guide to Flowers and Fatality. It's a great title. It's a beautiful cover. It's a Victorian era murder mystery. And you and I both met Kate at the Historical Novel Society conference last month. She's lovely. So we're going to be talking about that. And then later in August, Eliza Knight's coming back. Yay. And going to be our featured author and talking about her new book, which is starring Adele Astaire, which is, of course, about Fred's sister. And it's getting great reviews. So we're looking forward to that big time in August.
Great stuff this summer. Oh, and before I forget, if you are watching this and you live in Massachusetts, Beatrice is giving a talk at An Unlikely Story in Plainville on Friday. I will be there making a fool of myself. And but no, I am going to go there. It's a great talk. I've heard her talk before. She does a great job. So if you are interested, visit unlikelystory.com.
Perfect. All right. Well, I think that's it for us for now. And we'll catch you next time.
All right. Have a great vacation. I'll see you all next week. All right. Bye-bye.